Hey guys, my name is Alex and you're watching Big Al Books. Today I'm here to do the For the Love of Classics book tag, and this was created by Yamini over at The Skeptical Reader and Ange at Beyond the Pages, and I will link both their original videos down below because they had some incredible answers. I wasn't tagged by anyone to do this, but I'm gonna go rogue and do it anyway because I thought these were a very thought-provoking series of questions, so let's begin. Question number one, why do you read classics and how often do you read them? For me, I read a classic when I feel like reading one, so that's going to look pretty different month to month. Like last month for me, I didn't read any. This month, I've only read classics so far and I'm planning on reading some more, so that really depends on my mood. As for the why part, I've got 5 answers. 1, I like reading classics because I usually enjoy myself when I'm reading them. They're usually a pretty good time for me. 2, I like learning about what life was like in a different time and a different place, and I feel like classics give you a more authentic perspective than historical fiction can. 3, it is basically like communicating with a dead person, which is pretty cool. 4, even if I don't enjoy the experience of reading a classic, I'm usually going to gain some kind of value from having read it. There is usually a reason that these books have stuck around for so long, so you're usually going to gain at least some kind of insight into the world. And 5, I like reading classics because I feel like all books are in communication and in conversation with each other. So if you read a classic novel, it's going to help you understand a lot of books that have followed it. So, different books that were inspired by that classic or that reacted against that classic or that are alluding to that classic. It's kind of like a big puzzle, and when you read a classic, you're putting a new piece onto that puzzle and helping you get a better sense of the whole picture. Question number 2, what is a period, country, or culture that you haven't read many classics from and would like to? So I'm like woefully uneducated, I feel like, and I don't read a lot of books that have been written before the 1800s, so I'd love to read some more early literature, especially stuff from the Greek and Roman period. I am obsessed with the medieval time, so I'd like to read more stuff from then, as well as I need to read more things that exist outside of the Western canon, so especially classics from China or the Middle East would really be interesting. Question number 3, which modern book do you think will be a classic in 100 years' time? And I had such a hard time answering this question. I mean, think about how different life is going to be in 100 years with like technology and environmental stuff. Like, who knows what they're going to think was important out of the past. But I wanted to pick a book that came from this millennium, and I think one of the biggest achievements so far has been Roberto Bolaño's 2666. I think people living in the future are going to have a lot of issues that have stemmed from the carelessness of people of the past, and they might find value in this book because it really goes into great depth about the horrific and the dark side of mankind. Question number 4, what was the last classic you read? For me, that was Père Goriot by Honoré de Balzac, which I just finished up yesterday, and I don't know why I've been putting off getting around to Balzac. I just haven't really been interested, but I found this one at a thrift store, and I'm so glad I finally got around to reading it because I had such a great time reading this book. It is about all this drama that goes down at a Parisian boarding house. So there's like this juicy family drama, but it's also a critique of like the shallowness of Parisian society at the time. And it did what a good classic should do, and it just got me excited about everything in general. Like, now I want to like learn more about the French Revolution, and I want to start reading French again, so this book was a very exciting read for me, and I'm happy that Balzac has like 91 other books in this human comedy series because I look forward to reading some more of him in the future. Question number 5, what was the first classic you ever read? I'm trying to recall if it was In Search of Lost Time or if it was War and Peace. Just kidding. I do have a terrible memory though, but I do definitely remember reading Anne of Green Gables and The Hobbit when I was a kid, so those are probably my first formative classics. Question number 6 is favorite book cover, and I have two answers. The first one is that iconic edition of The Great Gatsby with that blue face thing. I love how that book and its cover have become so interconnected. As well, I really love this penguin edition of A Clockwork Orange. I love the bright colors as well as the creepy pop art depiction of Alex. Question number 7 is classic authors you wish had written more books, and there were so many people I could name for this question, but I decided to limit myself to only 5. So first up is Fyodor Dostoevsky, who was apparently working on a sequel to the brothers Karamazov, and it sounded like it was going to be truly glorious. So Alyosha is this pious religious brother in this book, but in the sequel, he was going to get this gang of school children behind him. He was going to become this revolutionary, and he was going to assassinate the Tsar. So that book sounded like it was going to be bananas, and I will be forever sad in my heart that it does not exist, because it would have been incredible. As well, I know Homer didn't technically write books, but I'm sure he had a lot more epic poetry in his arsenal. I mean, when you think about it, the Iliad only covers the span of like a few days, so I'm sure there must have been more poetry about the start of the war or about the end of the war and its aftermath. So I just wish that more of that poetry had found its way on paper so that we could still read it today. As well, for some female authors, I wish that Emily Bronte and Sylvia Plath had more than one novel to their name. I know they have their poetry collections as well, but these novels are sensational, and I wish that they had lived longer so they could write more. And finally, I put Thomas Hardy on the list. I know he wrote 14 novels, which is quite a lot, but I much prefer his later period novels, like the depressing ones, you know, like Tess of the D'Urbervilles and Jude the Obscure. But basically, Jude the Obscure was so like scandalous when it came out, and it caused such a ruckus that Thomas Hardy quit writing novels, and he only wrote poetry until he died. So I think that sucks, because imagine if he had continued writing novels that got even more depressing than Tess and Jude. That would have been amazing. Also, I wish the Library of Alexandria did not burn down, because think of all the cool shit we lost in that fire. Question number 8 is your least favorite classic. For me, that is easily The Lord of the Flies by William Golding. I don't think it's a well-written book. There isn't a single female character to be found, as well as I've heard some of William Golding's quotes before about women, and I think he is just sexist, as well as I was just really bored when I read this book. So this was a book that I was forced to read in school, and I pray that I will never have to teach it, because I really don't think that I could hide my contempt for this novel from my students. Question number 9 is favorite translated classic, and question number 10 is favorite modern classic, and I have the same book that answers both of those questions, and that is The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. And my translation is the one by Diana Bergen and Catherine Tiernan O'Connor, and I haven't read any other ones, so I can't say how it compares, but I have fallen in love with this book both times that I've read it, so I imagine that they're doing something right, as well as they have these really comprehensive notes at the back that don't just explain historical details, but also give you a lot of really interesting literary analysis as well. The Master and Margarita is about the devil and his pals going to Moscow and creating a bunch of trouble, and it just has everything that I love in a novel. Like, this book just does everything right for me. So it has this cutting social commentary, you know, this is very critical of the Soviet regime, as well as it has this really entertaining plot. It's got this emotional love story at its core, and it's not like a sickening love story, it's like actually like a good one, as well as there's all these fantastic and supernatural events. It is just so over the top, but I just love this novel, and I've only read it twice, but I have loved it each time and look forward to reading it again and again over in my life. Question number 11 is classic literary places you would like to visit, and I am very impressionable and under-traveled, so if you can write about a place in a convincing style, it will make me want to go there. So like reading about Willa Cather talking about New Mexico made me want to go there, or Gabriel Garcia Marquez writing about Colombia, or William Faulkner writing about the South. Like, if you can conjure up a very good sense of place, I will want to add it to my list. Question number 12 is first classic you would recommend for a child. And I would go with Le Petit Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, and I did not read this as a kid, but I wish I did. It is full of so many valuable life lessons, and I feel like it also really understands the perspective of children and the way that they think. And there's also some, charming illustrations in here as well, so that could be fun if you were a kid. Question number 13 is classics you think are mistitled and what would you title them? The only thing I could think of is that I don't really like when an author names their novel after the protagonist because it's just kind of lazy, and if you haven't read the book, a name isn't going to really tell you a lot about it. So, for example, The Catcher in the Rye is a lot more evocative than a book just called Holden Caulfield. So I think for books like Anna Karenina, you go into it thinking it's going to be about Anna Karenina, and you're not prepared that half the book is actually about Levin. So maybe the title should reflect that, like, tragic adulteress, but also nice guy who wants to live good life on a farm. Or like Jane Eyre could be something about like adventures of badass orphan and unfortunate creepy men she loves. I obviously don't have good titles, but that's not my job. Just come up with something a little more specific than a character you wrote about. And lastly, question 14 is your favorite classic you'd like to recommend to everyone. So we already talked about the Master and Margarita being my favorite, but the one I'd like to recommend to everyone is The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I think some people might need a little encouragement before picking this one up. It is a very long, very dense Russian classic, so I get that it kind of can appear intimidating, but I just like you to know that it's actually a lot of fun and there's a very juicy plot and great characters. So it is a fun read, as well as I think it is a very philosophical read, which is why everyone should give it a try, because there is a lot in here about what it means to live a good life. So I think everyone can come away taking away something insightful out of this book. All right, so those are all of my answers. If you have any thoughts about these books, or if you have different answers, please let's talk in the comments. As well, I'd like to tag anyone else who, like me, has not been specifically tagged, but still wants to answer these questions anyway. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.